Cultivation specialization? Hanju didn't hesitate too much. He noticed that he had obtained the 6 paths of reincarnation technique, which was most likely related to the spiritual physique of the 6 paths. The aptitudes of the 6 top-notch cultivation potentials had to be developed together. He wanted a holistic development. At the same time, he possessed top-notch talent in swordsmanship, so he naturally had to choose sword cultivation. After Hanju figured it out, he immediately clicked on swordsman. In an instant, a strange heat surged within his body. He fell into a trance. It was like a dream. It was very long, but he couldn't remember what happened in the dream. When he opened his eyes again, Hanju was covered in sweat. The screen in front of him had become a list of attributes.
Name, Hanju. Lifespan, 11/65. Race, mortal. Cultivation, none. Technique, 6 paths of reincarnation technique, can be inherited. Magic, none. Mystical power, none. Equipment, none. Cultivation potential, spiritual physique of the 6 paths. It contains top-notch wind, fire, water, earth, wood, and thunder cultivation potentials. Increases providence to a certain extent. Connate providence is as follows. Unparalleled, immortal beauty, top-notch charm. Destined sword fanatic, top-notch sword Dao aptitude, top-notch sword Dao learning ability. Unparalleled movement technique, top-notch movement technique aptitude. Descendant of the immortal emperor, after the game begins, you will receive an unparalleled cultivation technique and 1000 superior grade spirit stones. Check interpersonal relationships.
Hanju wasn't in a hurry to inherit the 6 paths of reincarnation technique. Instead, he clicked on the interpersonal relationships at the bottom. The screen changed and a photo of a person appeared. It looked exactly like Elder Iron.
Elder Iron, 7th level of the Chi refinement realm. He hates you. If you have cultivation potential, he would definitely scheme against you. Hatred level, 1 star.
Fuck, I worked so hard for you and you still hate me? Hanju cursed in his head. Then, he calmed down. This is so useful. I can see what others think of me. But why is there no one else? Mortals aren't included? Does Zhangge have no thoughts about me? Hanju couldn't figure it out, so he didn't think too much about it. He pushed open the door first and realized that it was almost noon. He couldn't be lazy anymore or he would be discovered. He immediately ran towards the herb garden. Hanju, did you sleep in? A middle-aged servant chided him laughingly. Hanju scratched his head in embarrassment, causing the others to laugh. They didn't think too much about it, nor did they really scold him. Hanju rarely failed his duty. And sleeping in once in a while was okay. The female cultivator at the entrance of the herb garden suddenly opened her eyes to look at Hanju. She frowned slightly. This young man is so handsome. A line of words appeared in front of Hanju.
Xing Hongxian has developed a favorable impression of you. Current favorability, 1 star.
What the hell? Who is Xing Hongxian? Hanju was baffled and turned around subconsciously. Can it be that female cultivator? As expected, the female cultivator was staring at him. Their eyes met, and Xing Hongxian smiled at him. Hanju quickly turned his head away. Crap. My top-notch charm has kicked into effect. I'm a mortal and she's a cultivator. A romantic relationship between us will not be blessed. Can it be that she wants to use me as a human furnace? No. He had to think of a way to avoid that. At night, after the other 5 servants were all sound asleep, Hanju lay on the bed and began to inherit the 6 paths of reincarnation technique. A huge amount of memories flooded his mind. After a long while, he opened his eyes. So, this is a cultivation technique. It's so complicated. Hanju thought to himself. He was only at the first level of the technique and he could reach the 9th level of the Qi refining realm. The 6 paths of reincarnation technique focused on a balanced development so that he could nurture the cultivation potentials of all 6 elemental types. Although the cultivation process was more complicated than cultivating only a single elemental type, Hanju's aptitude was exceptional and could make up for it. Only when 6 types of spirit Qi reached a certain level could one build their foundation. Hanju was very excited and quietly sat up. He had the system set up a barrier around his bed so that the 3 cultivators outside wouldn't notice. The other 5 servants were sound asleep. After all, it had been a tiring day. Hanju started to perform expiration exercises according to the first level. Expiration was a breathing technique. During the expiration process, he patiently sensed the heaven and earth spirit Qi. In less than 10 seconds, Hanju felt the wind, earth, wood, and water spirit Qi in the air. As for the fire and thunder spirit Qi, he couldn't capture them yet. Hanju began to absorb the 4 types of spirit Qi. Words suddenly appeared before his eyes. Even though his eyes were closed, he could still see these words. It was truly miraculous.
This is your first time cultivating. These are the following options for your cultivation development. Firstly, you can be a high-profile unparalleled prodigy. You can obtain 1 Qi refining realm equipment. Alternatively, you can keep a low profile and cultivate. You can activate the ability to hide your cultivation and cultivation potential.
Hanju chose the second option without hesitation. The second function was obviously a godly skill. This way, he would be able to cultivate in peace without the fear of being discovered.
You can activate the hidden function anytime.
Hanju smiled. Elder Iron had yet to return, so he had to seize the opportunity to become stronger. In the blink of an eye. 2 years passed quickly. The 18-year-old Hanju was already at the 7th level of the Qi refinement realm. His 4 cultivation potentials wind, earth, wood, and water were all at the 7th level of the Qi refinement realm. Hanju knew that Xinghongxian was only at the 7th level of Qi refining realm through the interpersonal relationships list. Elder Iron hadn't returned for the past 2 years. What was worth mentioning was that Xinghongxuan's good impression of him had increased to 2 stars. They had never even spoken. However, Hanju could sense that Xinghongxian kept staring at him, which made him feel uncomfortable. Being too handsome also had its troubles. Sigh. I only want to cultivate. Hanju sighed in his head. Xinghongxian was pretty, but definitely not so beautiful that people would give up anything for her. Hanju didn't want to fall in love with her. Once he loved someone, he would have a weakness. He wanted to live forever and not die halfway. He would consider romantic relationships once he had obtained immortality. As long as he was invincible, he could have as many women as he wanted. He wasn't afraid of his enemies finding trouble with him. As Hanju worked, he made the firm decision to see Xinghongxian as a lure that would sway him from his goals. At this moment, Xinghongxian suddenly rose to her feet. She walked over leisurely, attracting the attention of the other servants. She went straight to Hanju and smiled. Come with me. Hanju was stunned. The other servants looked at him enviously. To be able to attract the attention of such a fairy-like figure must be a good thing. All of them had already given up hope and had made themselves content with staying single for life. Hanju didn't dare to refuse and could only nod. The 2 of them walked out of the herb garden. The male cultivator opened his eyes and asked, Hongxian, what are you doing? He sized up Hanju and frowned. He's so handsome. The herb garden servants had never left the garden their entire lives. They had no aesthetic taste, and with their habitual thinking, they didn't really notice the change in Hanju much. As a female, Xinghongxian was the first to notice something different about him. The male cultivator observed Hanju carefully only because of Xinghongxian. Hanju's good looks made him instinctively unhappy. Xing Hongxian covered her mouth and smiled. It's fine. You can continue your cultivation. I want to talk to this young man. Alone. Hanju smiled awkwardly and anxiously at the male cultivator. The male cultivator frowned but did not say anything. Hanju followed Xing Hongxian into the woods. He was struggling internally. I'm too charming. What should I do next? Resist? Or obey? Hanju and Xing Hongxian arrived at a deserted corner of the forest. Hanju felt uneasy, fearing that Xing Hongxian would make that request. Xing Hongxian turned to look at him with a burning gaze. Hanju didn't dare to look her in the eyes. Xing Hongxian smiled and said, "Don't be nervous. I'm not trying to bother you. I just want to ask you, are you really willing to be a slave in this herbal garden forever?" Hanju was silent. Next, you want me to bow before you and become your toy? Xing Hongxian took a step forward and whispered into his ear, "Help me do something. I will help you cultivate and rid you of your mortal identity." What is it? Xing Hongxian opened and closed her mouth, but no sound came out. However, Hanju heard her clearly. "Help me obtain Elder Iron's alchemy recipe. I will bring you along when I leave the Jade Pure sect and we will head to the fiendish cult. I will treat you well in the future. Under me, you will not suffer at all. If you have the aptitude and achieve good cultivation, we can even become companions." Sound transmission. Hanju widened his eyes. This woman is actually a fiendish cultivator. Hanju had no idea what to do. This was no joke. If he agreed, he would offend the entire Jade Pure sect. If he refused, Xing Hongxian would never let him leave the forest. Elder Iron wasn't here. This was only the outer sect of the Jade Pure sect. No one would respond even if he shouted his lungs out. Xing Hongxian didn't rush him. She walked around Hanju and waited patiently. Hanju was weighing his chances of winning against Xing Hongxian. They were both at the 7th level of the Qi refinement realm. Without magic and equipment, how could he defeat Xing Hongxian? "I can't resort to brute force." Hanju pretended to be terrified and said, "I don't know where that thing is. Moreover, Zhanggu is there." Xing Hongxian looked satisfied. The fact that Hanju didn't mention the alchemy recipe meant that he was smart. "It's all right. I still have time. I can wait for you," Xing Hongxian said with a smile. She took out a pill and said, "This pill can help you unlock your cultivation potential. Take it, this is my greeting gift." Hanju looked at the pill. It looked like chocolate. It was definitely poison. Not able to refuse, Hanju placed it in his mouth. But he wrapped the pill with his spirit qi to prevent it from melting. After swallowing it, Hanju opened his mouth and deliberately showed it to Xing Hongxian. He then said excitedly, "Thank you, fairy-like miss. I will do my best." Damn it. Wait for me to cultivate for another year and I will let you know how formidable I am. It was impossible for Hanju to join the fiendish cult just like that. He wanted to live forever, not a risky life. Xing Hongxian covered her mouth and smiled. She reached out to touch Hanju's cheek and said with a smile, "You're so sensible. Be good. I will groom you as my husband in the future." Hanju showed excitement. But he was actually disgusted. "Stupid bitch, do you think you are worthy of me?" Xing Hongxian rubbed his face for a while more before the two of them returned to the herb garden. The male cultivator looked at Hanju suspiciously, frowning. Xing Hongxian smiled mysteriously and continued her cultivation. As Hanju walked into the herb garden, lines of words suddenly appeared before his eyes.
You were threatened by the fiendish cultivator Xing Hongxian. You have the following choices.
I can even be rewarded? Nice. Hanju's eyes lit up. He was even more determined to not listen to her. Night fell. Hanju returned to the room and activated the barrier function. He then spat out the pill in his stomach and placed it in his belt. Then, he walked to the wooden bed and sat down. He took out a steamed bun and started eating. He had already abstained from eating ordinary meals, but to not cause suspicion, he had to pretend to eat. It was late at night. After the 5 slaves had fallen asleep, Hanju continued to cultivate. Given his cultivation potential, it wouldn't be difficult for him to surpass Xing Hongxian. For the next few days, Hanju worked as usual. Zhang Gu had been cultivating in Elder Iron's residence, giving Hanju an excuse to not enter. Xing Hongxian seemed to be in no hurry. Hanju broke through to the 8th level of Qi Refinement Realm, and all 4 of his spiritual roots reached the 8th level of Qi Refinement Realm. It was worth mentioning that his lifespan had also increased by 20 years, making him overjoyed. The feeling of having his spiritual qi rapidly grow was truly wonderful. On the other hand, Xing Hongxian and Elder Iron hadn't progressed in their cultivation at all. This was the difference between a genius and a mortal. Hanju was secretly pleased. Indeed, one had to endure loneliness to become stronger. If he had started cultivating as a mortal from the very beginning, he might not even have reached the 4th level of the Qi Refinement Realm yet. That night, Hanju heard footsteps outside the door. He immediately lay down and closed the barrier. "I'm going to lure Zhang Gu away. You can go in and look for the item later." Xing Hongshuan's voice reached Hanju's ears. He opened his eyes and hurriedly got up. "Damn. I still can't run away from it." Hanju waited patiently. He, who was at the 8th level of Qi refining, had already obtained a divine sense, and his normal senses were also extraordinary. He could faintly hear the sound of tables and chairs colliding in the distant pavilion. "You can go now." Xing Hongshuan's voice flowed into his ear. Then, Hanju sensed Xing Hongxian and Zhang Gu rushing away from the roof. Hanju quietly got up and prepared to put on a show. After carefully leaving the house, he looked towards the entrance of the herb garden and discovered that the male cultivator had fallen under a tree. He couldn't tell if the guy was dead or alive. What a weak guy. Hanju couldn't help but ridicule him. He headed for the pavilion. Elder Iron's pavilion was 2 stories high, just like the villa. It was grand and magnificent, filled with all kinds of porcelain and paintings. After Hanju entered the house, he began to wander around. He didn't put in any effort at all. Even if there was something he wanted, he had no place to keep it. After sitting for half an hour, Hanju got up and continued to rummage through the drawers. He had to at least put on an act. Another half an hour passed. Xing Hongxian returned. She rushed into the room and found him. "Have you found it?" Standing beside a vase, Hanju turned around and said, "I couldn't find it. I searched everywhere but couldn't find it." All of a sudden, he noticed that Xing Hongxian was covered in blood. Had she killed Zhang Gu? Hanju retreated subconsciously and accidentally knocked over the vase on the table. Ping! The vase fell to the floor and shattered. Hanju saw a manual appearing in the broken vase with 2 words carved on it. Alchemy recipe. Silence. The room was so quiet that a dropping needle would have been heard. Hanju was stunned and felt extremely awkward. Damn it. Is this how Elder Iron hides his things? Xing Hongxian shifted her gaze from the alchemy recipe to him. It looked as if there was a bottomless abyss in her eyes. Hanju said in surprise, "He actually hid it in a vase. This old man really knows how to hide things."
Steal the alchemy recipe, gain Xing Hongshuan's favor, and obtain hatred level of 5 stars from the Jade Pure sect. Defy and not allow Xing Hongxian to obtain the alchemy recipe. After Xing Hongxian leaves, you will obtain the sword technique Unparalleled Finger Divine Sword.
Hanju was extremely nervous. He tried his best to look pleasantly surprised, as he prepared for Xing Hongxian to attack him any moment. Xing Hongxian suddenly walked forward and grabbed his hand tightly. She smiled excitedly and said, "You're really my lucky charm." I'm happy as long as you're happy. She walked around him, picked up the recipe, and began to flip through it. She seemed to be looking for something. Hanju waited nervously. Should he make a move? If Xing Hongxian took the recipe away, he wouldn't be able to obtain the sword technique. Xing Hongxian seemed to be injured, and her breathing was unstable. Ambush her? So that she will back off and give up? Just as Hanju was hesitating, a gust of cold wind swept through the door. Hanju was caught off guard and was sent flying, crashing into the wall and rebounding to the ground. Not really painful. Just a little scary. Hanju stared in the direction. It was Elder Iron. He tilted his neck and shook his right leg vigorously. He was pretending to have passed out. Put down my alchemy recipe. Elder Iron said coldly. Xing Hongxian talked back coldly, you're actually back. Elder Iron said expressionlessly, I've been back for a long time, but I've been waiting for you to show up. The last time I came back, I saw the two of you the moment I arrived. All these years, the other disciples have not accepted any of my missions, only the two of you have. There must be something fishy. With that, Elder Iron suddenly launched an attack at Xing Hongxian, pushing his palm at her. In his palm was a talisman. As Xing Hongxian instinctively jumped away, a lightning bolt shot out from Elder Iron's palm and wrapped around her. Elder Iron then kicked Xing Hongxian, sending her flying backward. Almost instantly, Elder Iron snatched the alchemy recipe back. Xing Hongxian landed on the ground, her body twitching uncontrollably. With his advantage, Elder Iron continued pursuing Xing Hongxian, causing her to flee. The two of them zoomed out one after another. Lying on the ground, Hanju hesitated whether he should get up. No. If he got up, he wouldn't be able to avoid suspicion. Hanju also thought about escaping. But it was too dangerous. He didn't even know where to run to. So, he waited patiently. After an hour, Hanju couldn't help but scratch his butt. Then, he suddenly felt an aura approaching the pavilion. It was Elder Iron. Hanju didn't dare to move. As he entered the pavilion, Elder Iron noticed him and frowned. Hanju suddenly coughed. Elder Iron walked to a nearby chair and sat down, quietly staring at him. Hanju displayed the best and most realistic acting skills ever. He rubbed his head and got up. Looking around in confusion, he was pleasantly surprised to see Elder Iron. Elder Iron! You're finally back. Hanju shrunk his neck and looked around nervously. He carefully asked, then, where did the witch go? Elder Iron looked at him expressionlessly. Hanju hurriedly stood up and lowered his head before Elder Iron, looking uneasy. Hanju was gambling. He was gambling that Elder Iron didn't notice the communication between Xing Hongxian and him. If he discovered it, Hanju could only go all out. What did she tell you? Elder Iron asked. Hanju didn't dare to hide anything and answered truthfully. Humph. She wants to train you to be her husband. What a joke. Elder Iron was so angry that he laughed. This kid must be daydreaming. He examined Hanju carefully. Huh. It's actually true. This kid had really become handsome. Just based on his looks and gaze, he wasn't inferior to those inner sect disciples at all. The changes were too great. Could it be? Elder Iron stretched out his hand and grabbed Hanju's right wrist, pondering carefully. Nervous, Hanju was ready to attack at any time. This kid doesn't have a cultivation potential or cultivation. Am I overthinking? Old Iron silently thought. Seeing Hanju's fearful and anxious appearance, he couldn't help but think of his parents, and his mood immediately became irritable. He snapped. Go back to sleep. Hanju heaved a sigh of relief, hurriedly bowed, then left the pavilion quickly. Elder Iron began to tidy up the room. Back in his room, Hanju quietly went to bed.
As you did not help Xing Hongxian steal the alchemy recipe, you successfully obtained the sword technique. Unparalleled Finger Divine Sword.
Hanju was in a good mood. He finally had a life-saving technique. He immediately chose to inherit it. A wave of memories surged into his mind. The Unparalleled Finger Divine Sword wasn't considered a martial art, but a magical spell. He could brandish his finger as a sword, and the spirit chi would transform into a blade. Hanju was very talented with sword techniques and was able to master the magical spell in one night. Half a month later, Elder Iron left the herb garden again. He had been going out more frequently in the past 10 years. Hanju heard from Old Man Wang that Elder Iron seemed to be nearing the end of his life and was looking for herbs to increase his lifespan. Not everyone could break through easily like Hanju. Elder Iron's cultivation level was stuck at the 7th level of the Qi refinement realm and could not increase further. This was the difference in cultivation potential. Elder Iron was a typical moral cultivator who wanted to change his fate. Hanju prayed in his heart, hoping that this old man would die on the way. The reason he had such a vicious thought was that he noticed that Elder Iron still had a level of hatred of 1 star towards him. Elder Iron was a potential enemy. In the blink of an eye, 2 years passed. The 20-year-old Hanju had cultivated all 4 spiritual roots to the 9th level of the Qi refining realm. As long as he cultivated his lightning and fire cultivation potential to the 9th level of the Qi refinement realm, he could begin preparing to break through to the foundation establishment realm. However, there was no lightning or fire spiritual Qi around the herb garden. Hanju knew that it was time for him to leave. That night, he quietly left. Hanju still had 1,000 superior grade spirit stones that he had yet to take out. This would be the source of his confidence in traveling the cultivation world. Along the way, Hanju used his divine sense to search his surroundings as he walked. He was prepared to pay a visit to the Jade Pure sect and become its disciple. The Jade Pure sect probably wouldn't reject a cultivator at the 9th level of Qi refinement realm. The next morning, Hanju finally found the Jade Pure sect. The sect was located in a valley between mountains. Mysterious mist pervaded the air, and 2 huge stone statues flanked the gate. They looked like Kirin statues. "Stop right there. Show us your sect pass," said a disciple of the Jade Pure sect as he raised his sword. A total of 4 disciples were guarding the entrance of the Jade Pure sect, and all of them were at the 5th level of the Qi refinement realm. Hanju turned off the concealment function and clasped his hands. "I'm Hanju, a rogue cultivator at the 9th level of Qi refinement realm. Do I have any way to join the Jade Pure sect?" The 9th level of Qi refinement realm. The 4 disciples' attitudes instantly changed. The sword-wielding disciple told the disciple beside him, and the latter disciple quickly left. "Wait a moment. I've sent someone to inform the outer sect warden," said the sword-wielding disciple. Hanju thanked him. In the Jade Pure sect, other than Elder Iron, no other cultivator knew his name. Elder Iron had yet to return and might have died outside, so Hanju wasn't worried about exposing his identity. In any case, he had done nothing to harm the Jade Pure sect, so nothing was stopping him from joining the sect. Thanks for watching.